This is Technically Legal, a podcast about legal technology, innovation in the legal industry, and the impact tech is having on the law. I'm Chad Main, the founder of legal services company Percipient, and on today's show, I'm having a conversation with Rocket Lawyer VP of AI, Tyler Foreman. He and I are going to talk about democratizing artificial intelligence for legal. My guest today is Tyler Foreman. He's the VP of AI at Rocket Lawyer. Rocket Lawyer is a company that tries to transform how small businesses and individuals deal with legal workflows, and now they're using conversational AI to help them get the legal work done. Tyler's not a lawyer by training, and as we'll hear, unlike a lot of guests on the podcast, he didn't take the usual legal tech path. Before Tyler jumped into the use of artificial intelligence for legal work, he started as an engineer at tech giants like Intel. He's also helped build geospatial platforms to analyze drone data, and also help predict catastrophic equipment failures. Ultimately, he moved over to DocuSign to help lead early agentic AI initiatives. When he moved over to DocuSign, that's when he started to get into legal work. He started working on contract lifecycle management software. Through this work with LLMs, he realized the same foundational principles he used to analyze physical landscapes could probably be applied to unstructured text. He figured if data is the fossil fuel of the AI boom, the text-heavy legal domain is a landscape just waiting to be mapped. So after DocuSign, he joined Rocket Lawyer. That's where he's at now. And that's where they're trying to level the playing field for everybody that needs legal tech, not just for lawyers and legal professionals. On today's show, Tyler's going to fill us in about Rocket Lawyer's new agentic AI legal operating system, Rocket Copilot. He's going to tell us what legal tasks small businesses need handled the most, and how generative AI and all these LLMs can help finally move the needle on the access to justice movement. We're going to close out the conversation today with what it means to be VP of AI in 2026, and why Tyler thinks generalists may have to take a backseat to domain experts in a new AI world. Your background's pretty interesting. You go Intel, you get into robotics, geospatial stuff, DocuSign, which we'll get to. I think that's where you got into legal. But you started on an end of the spectrum that is completely not legal. How do we get where we are today at Rocket Lawyer?
Definitely is a very nonlinear career path. But I think the common thread across these roles is I've always been interested in being at this intersection of, even before, the recent AI boom, AI has been around for a while.
People don't realize AI has been around since what, the 50s? Like
Yeah, the
before,
50s, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't as sophisticated, but it was around.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's gone through different fits and starts over the decades. But, even in the early 2000s, there were machine learning, recommendation engines, and things like that. And I was always interested in that intersection of AI and complex, like regulated domains. So, early in my career, I started out as an engineer at Intel and then Agilent, which, really gave me some good technical foundations as an engineer. But I moved into entrepreneurship actually relatively early in my career. So I was a founder. And that's when I started getting into things like geospatial. In this case, it was in kind of water management, like resource management, a regulated domain, but an area where, historically technology wasn't applied very well. They were sort of underserved by technology, and particularly things like AI and analytics. So we brought some of the concepts to that industry, AI combined with geospatial and some, best practices to really kind of turn this messy and complex inputs of sensor data, maintenance records, things like that, into insights that a non-technical expert could understand. So that's always been something that's resonated with me, even as I progressed later in my career to Intel again, DocuSign, and now Rocket Lawyer.
What year do you start at Rocket Lawyer?
I just started last year. So I came on in the fall. So I've been about 8 months or so in the role.
It was DocuSign immediately prior, correct?
Correct, yes.
And then, so how do you get to DocuSign from all these prior, like we talk about, a little different than enterprise business tech?
So prior to DocuSign, I was at Intel, and I was in a group there. Again, it was very different from legal, where we were helping primarily like electric utilities solve critical problems they were facing, especially out west here in California, where wildfires are a big problem. And there are actually acute issues where some of this infrastructure was, being responsible for igniting wildfires. And part of the problem was that was equipment failures. So I was part of a group at Intel where we actually had a drone group, like we actually sold drones at the time, but they were collecting all this data and it was very difficult to extract insights from them. And these customers, particularly in the utility space, what they wanted to know is like, where are there potential problems in their network that they need to go fix before they turn into catastrophic events? So we built a geospatial platform to help them analyze that data, extract insights. This was using computer vision, which, computer vision in the kind of life cycle of AI sort of led the language models in terms of like, getting real traction and real, impactful use cases, like starting in like 2012. So this also was like my intro to like really digging into kind of modern AI, I would say. But during my time at Intel, I was working on this problem. Some of my colleagues actually made the jump over to DocuSign and started working there and I heard, oh, it's great over here. You should come join. So, in a way I sort of got pulled into DocuSign, but what attracted me with that role was really working at that very large scale. DocuSign's, has massive scale. The products we were working on, again, were solving complex problems. We were focused more on the enterprise side of things. As you mentioned, that is where I made my introduction into the legal domain.
Was it part of the CLM effort over there? Is that how you get morphed over there?
Yeah, so I joined the CLM team initially. And, as you know, CLM, most of our customers were very large enterprises, some of the biggest companies in the world. So they're dealing with very complex contracting workflows, contracting challenges. And it was a really great opportunity, one, to just kind of learn the legal domain and how the legal domain, especially in businesses, operates at scale. And then where are the friction points? Where are friction points where AI in particular could make a meaningful difference in improving outcomes for the customers? And I came to the role with that mindset of like, okay, we learned how to use like computer vision to solve similar problems at Intel. How can we apply the same core principles using, natural language models and AI approaches to the legal domain? And the legal domain is, very well suited for these language models, even the early days of the language models, just because it's like the perfect use case. It's text heavy. Everything's in like unstructured documents. So there's like a huge opportunity to make a difference there.
That's cool. And so then, how long are you at DocuSign?
I was at DocuSign for about 4 years. I stayed mostly in the CLM group, but did branch out towards the end. As DocuSign, sort of their latest initiative is a platform called Intelligent Agreement Management. And we had an effort to bring agentic AI capabilities to that platform. So I led the kind of early effort on that, building out a platform capability to deploy agents that could streamline various points of the agreement or contracting workflow, and then also make it sort of self-service. So you could actually, have a studio to actually define these agents and deploy them on the platform. So we were very early. It's progressed a lot since my time there, but we were, I guess, sort of the pathfinders of that initiative.
Yeah, that's cool. And then, so how do you end up at Rocket Lawyer? What's the connection? Why the jump?
What really intrigued me about Rocket Lawyer, so, DocuSign gave me this foundation in legal, which to me, again, as I mentioned, I think it's one of the highest leverage applications for AI, and especially like our existing AI capabilities today with LLMs.
You talk about legal in general.
Legal in general, yeah, exactly. So that was really exciting to me, of being able to apply these capabilities and make meaningful differences in business outcomes or user outcomes. What attracted me to Rocket Lawyer was a couple things. One, a lot of the AI technology investments that have happened in the industry are very focused on serving either law firms, attorneys at law firms, or legal or contracting teams at big companies. But no one was really looking at like, how can we democratize these same capabilities and deliver services more effectively to small business owners, individuals, solopreneurs that, still have these challenges, but often don't have the resources to hire a law firm to represent them in all of these things, or hire an attorney to handle every matter. So this kind of mission driven approach to democratize access to these capabilities to to anyone that needs them was very, very attractive to me.
To that point, for those that might not be familiar with Rocket Lawyer, I think most people are, but give the elevator pitch. Someone meets you at a barbecue, they say, "Hey, where do you work?" You say, "Rocket Lawyer," and then they say, "Well, what is that?"
So Rocket Lawyer has been around for a while. We've been around since 2008, about 17 years. And really the mission of the company has always been the same. It's really democratizing access to justice or to legal services. How that sort of manifested historically was one of the biggest pillars of the product or the service offering is access to legal documents. So the ability to kind of come on the platform, you're starting a company, you need an LLC operating agreement, or you have a personal situation like estate planning, you need a will or trust, things like that. All these documents are available on the platform. It guides you through kind of a very streamlined interview process. And at the end of it, you get a legally enforceable document because they're all vetted by attorneys over the years. So that's how the company really got its start. There's ancillary offerings as well where you can do business filings, business formations, trademarks, e-signature, et cetera. But the documents have really been the core of the business. And again, it's really about making these services simple and affordable. However, the company's in the midst of a transformation. So with the rise of generative AI, we saw an opportunity to really transform how legal services are delivered. And one of the things that's been layered onto this in the past few years is, first of all, access to human legal pros. So users can come onto the platform if they need to ask a question.
You guys have had that for a while, though, right?
We've had that for a
Even
while, yeah.
predated the LLMs, correct?
Yes, correct. But where the LLMs come in is really adding a layer in front of all that, like connective tissue, where users can come to the platform, start to, they might not know what they need. They don't know necessarily the solution to their situation. And that's where Copilot, our new product, comes in and really provides that guidance and concierge experience to solutions through a conversational AI native experience. And that might be guidance to creating a document, drafting a legal document, which the AI also helps them complete, to maybe connecting with a pro if the situation,
So let's talk
warrants
about
it.
the workflow because I love Rocket Lawyer. I've used it before.
Yeah.
Even though I'm a lawyer, I still love it because it's right. The forms are succinct to the point. They're dependable. But when I've used it, I've gone on there, kind of filled in some variables, got it signed or whatever. But now it sounds like there's more to it for those that may not want to go as direct. You could potentially start with a AI chat, and then so talk me through the workflow. How's it work now?
Yeah. So this is all very new. We just launched a new version of our Rocket Copilot product just a couple weeks ago. And again, this really transforms the entire experience. This isn't really a marketing speak, but the way I describe it is it's like a legal OS, an agentic legal OS for small businesses, solopreneurs, and individuals. So the experience basically, like you said, starts with a conversation. So often, users come with a situation, they're not sure how to navigate it or what to do next. And that's where our agents are there to help guide the user, triage the situation, understand it, gather context. And this is all grounded in 17 years of legal knowledge that the company has built up. And the difference between that and like going to a generic LLM is that grounding in legal knowledge over the years. But it's also like, okay, you have a situation, here's how you might be able to address it. And it's also there to help you address it. So you can actually fulfill solutions on the platform, whether that's drafting the appropriate set of legal documents, whether that's analyzing a contract that you were sent and you're not sure if you should sign it or not, and understanding where the risks are. And then should you draft a different document? Should you bring in a legal pro to help you, double check that or make it more balanced in your favor? So the experience really navigates this kind of conversationally led capability, but also to these solutions where they can actually get their situation resolved.
So you mentioned democratization of legal assistance. How does AI enable that even more than it was prior? Because we talked about the forums, you get the live help. How is that greasing the wheels of that democratization effort?
There's a couple of things. Like I mentioned earlier, a lot of the investments in legal tech to date have been in service of advanced, legal users like attorneys. But what we do is really democratize even those types of tools to be available to these users. So attorneys are using tools to run contract analyses, find risk. Should their client sign this or not. They're using tools to draft documents from templates that they've already approved. They're legally enforceable. They're using AI to research a particular situation and get sort of that initial guidance. And then of course they are attorneys, so they have the ability to like make legal advice and decisions. So what we're doing is bringing all of those capabilities that to date have been really reserved for like legal firms or larger companies, and making it available even to individuals and small businesses. So I think the conversational aspect is a great sort of easy way to get started. Like not every user is comfortable like just hopping on a call with an attorney. So, even just sort of removing that maybe barrier of, intimidation to legal solutions is one way that we do that. But it's really just distilling these capabilities like contract review tools, document drafting down into something that even someone who's not a legal expert or has no legal sophistication can understand what situation they're in, what they should do next, and how they can get their situation resolved.
I'm sure you guys keep metrics on, the what contracts are used most often, or what clauses. You're probably down pretty granular. So you keep mentioning small SMBs, small businesses. Where do you see them going? Where do you see they need the most help? Because if they're that small, maybe they can't really afford the law firm, or if they can't afford the law firm, they can't have everything. Like, what do you see? Like, what's the most frequent thing that these companies are needing help with?
One of the really strong signals we've seen, especially after this launch, is sort of that question, should I sign this contract? So, you know, contracts are sort of the lifeblood of business if you think about it. Like everything sort of, relationships are always sort of formed through contracts and made formal, whether it's you're selling something, you're buying something, you're hiring people, etc. So, contracts are very important to businesses. And what we've seen is that should I sign this is a very common question. Whether it's like, they're bringing on a new client, and the client sent them, they're maybe provide services. Client sent them a consulting services agreement. They're not sure if there's something in there that is out of place or puts them at risk, et cetera. So what we've done is really provided this kind of, again, democratized contract review process where they can easily come, start a conversation, explain their situation and context, upload a contract. And Copilot will provide, really what I would call like a plain English contract review. You can do this in other LLM services, but even those are sort of, they get into legalese and complexity. What we've done is really structured the output of this to the outcomes that we think users need, which is like, what should I be worried about most? And what are maybe some nice to haves? So that particular use case is very strong with our customers, sort of that contract analysis, how to take that and get it into a better state, what to push back on, et cetera. And then, of course, just drafting legally enforceable documents. Again, you can go to an LLM service and ask for an NDA to be drafted or ask for an LLC operating agreement if you're starting a new company. But the problem with that is that you're going to get a different result every time you ask that question to the LLM, and you're not going to be confident that the output of that is probably pretty good, but even a slight deviation in language can make the ultimate contract, not enforceable legally. So those two use cases are very strong for us still. And then, of course, as they identify problems or they have like further, more complex questions that start to veer into legal advice, our AI also identifies that, helps guide them.
I was going to ask that the question, should I sign this? Presumably, you have to have a human in the loop, because that's asking for some legal advice right there, right?
Yeah. So, the way we frame it on the platform is not giving legal advice. It is more like things you can consider or things you should pay attention to. But then when they need that level of advice, our agents know when to escalate it to the human pro when it needs that next level. And they can seamlessly connect right within the conversation. And all of that context also goes to the legal pro. So the legal pro is already teed up and ready with the questions they've answered, a summary. If there's been a contract review done by AI, they have access to that. So it's a very seamless, continuous experience for the customer.
So you are the VP of AI at Rocket Lawyer. So tell me, what's a day in the life? What are your responsibilities, and what's a day in the life like?
It's a very unique role, actually, which is another reason I was really attracted to it. Day to day, or sort of like the scope of the role is I own the AI product portfolio for Rocket Lawyer, so all the customer facing products powered by AI, which primarily is our Copilot product we just launched. So, I own product management, engineering, design. We have like some data engineering as well to like basically we're all responsible for delivering our AI product capabilities. So, I think what's unique about this is actually very timely in our industry as well. Like kind of that bringing together product engineering and design and data under one squad to go deliver products is very indicative, I think, like where the industry is going to. So we're starting to see with AI coding tools, AI prototyping tools, all of these amazing capabilities that are available. A lot of these disciplines are kind of compressing, so the lines are starting to blur, between design, product management, engineering, et cetera. And also as code becomes cheaper to produce, you can do things much faster and more iteratively and try things and throw it away if you need to. But a day in the life for me is really kind of overseeing that pod of innovation. We're definitely an innovation team. My role is to make sure those pods are collaborating tightly, doing fast iterations of innovations, identifying the right problems we're solving for customers, and then making sure we're testing that with customers, validating it, and then taking that feedback and iterating. And then, of course, like bridging that over to the business goals, like what kind of business outcomes are we trying to achieve? So it's really a very product development heavy role, but I also have responsibility to make sure that what we deliver is driving the business outcomes we want as well.
This type of role, VP of AI, didn't exist even, I don't know, like 5 years ago, probably didn't exist. So what's that mean, and how does that differ from the prior tech roles? Why is a VP of AI needed rather than just some like CTO or somebody else responsible for this area of the technology business and stack?
No, you're right. It is a new role. I mean, I think traditionally you would have seen maybe a VP of engineering and a VP of product and kind of more separated disciplines. This role is a result of sort of that change in how and the ways of working that we're seeing in the industry where these disciplines are again sort of compressing or the lines are blurring a little bit. So bringing those all together under one team we found to be very effective in terms of like creating those tight innovation loops where designers, product managers, engineers are sort of working together from the very beginning to like ideate concepts, test them, validate them, iterate them very rapidly. And what that's done is it's really, by bringing these together and empowering these teams to work in that manner, it's really reduced our cycle time of innovation, where like cycle times may have been, okay, product is over here, working maybe with design to come up with requirements and outcomes and things like that. And then there's sort of like this later abrupt handoff over to engineering once it's all buttoned up. What we're finding is we can actually go much faster by having these teams working in very tight collaboration to where, we're not waiting for these long cycle times to deliver a new product or a new feature. We're like constantly looping and the pace is so much faster and the quality is much better because we're moving fast and we're testing and incorporating feedback in each loop. So it's just getting better and better every time.
So if someone wants to get in this type of role, they aspire to be VP of AI at whatever company. What do you tell them? Because obviously, when you started out, whole different ball game. So what do you tell somebody in 2026 that wants to take this role?
I have a few thoughts on that. I think one is getting deep in a domain.
Interesting.
Yeah, what I mean by that is, there's a lot of sort of maybe what you call AI generalists out there that, you know the technical concepts of AI, et cetera. But where the value creation really comes is like, how do you apply those capabilities and techniques to a specific domain? So in our case, it's legal, right? Like getting deep into the legal use cases and what are the problems that users are facing in that industry. I think someone who can combine deep domain expertise with deep AI expertise is very rare and valuable even today. I think one thing that has been valuable for me, it wasn't maybe intentionally done through my career, but I have taken on roles that spanned more technical engineering focus type roles, but also over on like product management side of things. And again, as those things start to, at least in the way we've set things up where they start to work more closely and collaboratively, like having knowledge across those disciplines is also been very valuable for me, at least in my experience. And I think that's gonna probably be a trend going forward where you'll see these disciplines coming together closer and closer, some of the roles compressing as AI starts to enable, more productivity and faster cycle times, like I mentioned. I think you do still have to be technical though. I mean, in this kind of role, like you have to have some technical expertise. I don't think you have to go get hands-on and fine-tune models every day, but you have to know where the boundaries are and what the capabilities are, so that you can make educated judgments on where the roadmap should go, where we should be making investments that, will likely lead to the outcomes we need versus maybe being more North Starry kind of exploration type of things, which are also important. The other thing too, I mean, this is for this role, but I think any leadership role, I preach this to my team is just having this founder mindset or founder mode. I think is really important. At Rocket Lawyer, we see ourselves almost as like a startup within the company, like pathfinding these new AI capabilities. How do we deliver value with them? But it's really bringing that founder mindset of ownership end to end of the outcomes. I think is just another unique quality that someone can develop over time and apply to be successful in a role like this.
First thing you mentioned is master a domain, but you're a tech guy, you're not a lawyer. So how do you juggle that? Because you have the tech angle, but you don't have the lawyer angle. So what do you do when, you're trying to do some testing, give feedback, but some of it is dependent on the analysis of some sort of legal angle or legal question? How do you navigate that as a tech guy?
So there's a couple of things there. I mean, getting deep in a domain, I'm definitely not a lawyer. I don't know all the ins and outs of legal. What I do if I need that kind of input at Rocket Lawyer, we have on our team legal experts, kind of paralegals, attorneys. Not being afraid to pull in help when you need it is very important quality as well. So I do that all the time, and we depend heavily on these legal experts and inside of our company to make sure like what we're building is legally valid, legally enforceable, and makes sense from a legal standpoint. But I think there is also another way to get deep in domains. Even with legal, for example, it's like really knowing the customer, what their pain points are, what problems are they facing, having that empathy for what their challenges are, and a genuine desire and curiosity to go figure out how to best solve that. But that solution might require, again, like pulling in help from legal experts. But I think there's also an ability to really understand from a product management mindset, like what are the problems we're solving? It may not be specific, like deep legal questions, but like the one I mentioned earlier, like someone gets a contract, they don't know what to do. What is sort of their thought process or what's the business flow that they're trying to follow? Like they're trying to sell something, they're trying to buy something. How do we get them to that outcome in the most efficient way and also in a way where they're confident that they are protected and secure? So I think there's a combination of like very deep expertise in, for example, legal concepts, but there's also deep expertise in the users we are serving and the challenges they are facing and what those workflows look like, et cetera. So I think that's where I've focused my expertise is on that latter part. And then I pull in help when I need the legal specific input.
So what's on the roadmap? What features do you have in the works? You said it's brand new, so what's the plan?
We have some really exciting things on the roadmap through the rest of the year into next year. I can't really comment on the very specific points of it yet, but what I can say, where our focus is really expanding the use cases that Copilot can handle, the types of situations it can help users navigate through. Right now, it's pretty good at kind of helping guide users through situations. But as it gets more complex right now, it'll generally need to hand it over to the human pro sooner in the process. What we're working on next is really expanding to handle end-to-end solutions for users in a more comprehensive way. And that doesn't mean just with AI. That means with a combination of AI plus humans. Like that's a very critical part of our service offering is having that right balance of self-service with the human expert help. So this year we'll have more of those situations, more targeted capabilities to help users navigate them. And again, get to that resolution of the situation, not just here's what you're facing. It's actually here's what you're facing. And now let us help you get it resolved. So a lot of exciting things to come on that front.
Tyler, I appreciate your time. This has been great. If people want to learn more about Rocket Lawyer, especially Copilot, or they want to get a hold of you, where do you want to send them?
Go to rocketlawyer.com, learn more about Copilot, try it out. You can start for free. You can send a few messages, you can register, but from there you can use it for free. And then as you access premium features, you can get a membership. So yeah, definitely would love people to try it out. Send us feedback. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. Happy to connect with anyone who's interested in learning more.
Okay, that's a wrap for today's episode. As always, we really appreciate you listening. If you want to subscribe, you can find us on most major podcast platforms like Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, etc. Also, if you like us enough, I hope you leave us a favorable review. Thanks again for listening. Until next time, this has been Technically Legal.